Welcome to Cut the Crop, keeping you in the know about everything you grow. Researchers, growers and other interesting folk delivering insights and information on topics ranging from agronomy to profitability. Brought to you by the Foundation for Arable Research.
Hello and welcome. My name's Alison Stewart and I'm your host of this session of Cut the Crop. And today our guest is FAR Senior Field Research Officer Owen Gibson, who's going to be talking about what we're up to in our field research sites at Chertsey and Kowhai. Welcome, Owen.
Welcome.
We're going to talk about, you're in charge basically of our Chertsey research site and our Kowhai research site. So let's start off with Chertsey because it's probably the one that most growers know about because that's where we hold our area event and our big crops event. So maybe just talk about first what, I guess, how long have we been at Chertsey? I don't know actually because I've only been here 6 years. Have we always had it from day one?
It's been, obviously it was a long time before I came around to FAR. But I think it was in the very early 2000s that FAR took on the Chertsey arable site, and we've been running trials there ever since. And some of those trials, like the establishment trials, been running pretty much from the get-go in the same spot. So, it's been a great site for us, and we've had a lot of good trials, and it's cool to see these long-term trials running in the same areas as well.
How big is it?
Roughly 10 hectares with a 2 hectare block out the back paddock, which we've actually just put into a new trial, which is a demonstration. Look with the farmer group making decisions on what we're doing between a future farm scenario and a conventional system.
Yeah, because in the past we didn't really use that back paddock, did we, other than for when we had like all the sponsors and everything like that come for the crops events.
Yeah, so to my mind, it was always underutilised. It was this great area that we only ever used once every 2 years, and the rest of the time it just sort of sat in turf ryegrass. So it's really exciting to get some new sort of trials running, and a different type of trial, which is a demonstration and getting a lot of input from farmers. It's quite exciting. But also it's changed how we're going to run the crops event that we've got coming up this November, 27th of November, everyone.
Yeah.
So it'll be a different layout, and I think it's going to be really exciting having everything in the front paddock together. But so no, it's all going well, the arable site.
Yeah. So let's talk about what was happening on the arable site this last season, and how did the season go, and was there any interesting sort of results that came out of the work that we were doing there?
So I think it was a very good season, particularly for autumn cereals, like our barley yields, particularly for us at the Chertsey site. We don't have great barley yields with autumn crops, but this year was sort of outstanding. We're getting sort of 11.5 tonnes, and even our dryland yields were similar to our irrigated trial yields. The autumn wheat was around 14 tonnes a hectare in the irrigated, and sort of around 10 tonnes in the dryland. So I think having the cooler spring temperatures with lots of moisture really helped our autumn cereals. Like it maybe cut back some people with really, really high yielding because there was lower solar radiation. But it was good to see that we had some nice yields. It allowed us to, even though we may have had some problems with establishment, for crops to tiller out really well and produce a lot of heads. So results-wise, still we're getting some back, but obviously it takes time to process all the samples that get taken. So we're still getting results coming in, but there were some really good results coming in, especially in their barleys. Like with a lot of our trials are looking at herbicide resistance in barley, within ryegrass particularly, and how we can use barley or manage ryegrass. And so I think there's a lot of great information coming out of the site, and I look forward to seeing it presented to the farmers.
Yeah. So what's the plans for this coming season? And actually, how do you decide what's going on the site? Because obviously you have to almost manage the rotations so that you're not got the same, the same trials going on, the same bit of the site, and you don't get the build-up of, pests and diseases.
So the site's separated into 6 columns, and every year we only utilise 2 columns of it, and the other 4 are put into a restorative phase of usually a ryegrass, because it's easy to manage. We change the columns around, so one year we may have cereals up one end and more herbage trials down the other, and every so often we'll split those over so we're not having the same crops in the same areas, just to reduce the risk of some of these pests. But yeah, it works really well, and it's been working well for a long time. Obviously, I think the dryland columns, it's not been utilised as much with, there's not as many dryland farmers now. But yeah, it's going well.
Yeah. So what's happening this season then?
So obviously we have a lot of our projects are multi-year projects. So we look at what's going in. We have this in the cereal space. We have CPT, which is run on our site every year, and that's also one of the sites that's run with the nil fungicide block, to see how the cultivars sort of go with no fungicide at all, and we can see disease resistance ratings between them. Biological trials, so looking at different biologicals that we can put into wheat, particularly in the face of grass scrub at our site. At the Chertsey site's a big issue. And then more barley nitrogen work. In the herbage one, we've got 2 tall fescue trials looking at post-harvest management of residues, especially going through the winter, and irrigation and tall fescue. We have looking at new ryegrass genotypes, trying to get the newer varieties to yield and how we can manage those better. And then white clover, we're still trying to see how we can control broom rape and white clover, and a little bit of autumn linseed as well, which will be presented at crops.
Yeah. And obviously crops is, as you say, 27th
of November.
But have we got any other extension events or field walks planned for Chertsey over the year?
There will be ones going on. Usually we'd have one for some of our herbicide trials, but we're going to try to move that to Kowhai Farm. But we're trying to bring people onto site all the time. So it's, even though crops is our biggest event, we are bringing people in with multiple times throughout the year.
Yeah.
I specifically can't tell you when they will be, but yeah, it's a great platform to showcase what we're doing. So.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we've had Chertsey for a while, and then we decided that we would also acquire some land at the Kowhai site near Lincoln University. What was the rationale for that, and what are we doing at Kowhai?
So one of the big rationales for the Kowhai site at Lincoln, which is just down the road from Lincoln University, and it's all surrounded by the CRI research institutes, is particularly in the first instance is getting more interaction with the students around the universities. I mean, also just showcasing our research close to home as well. So we had a place that we could maybe do slightly different from what we had at Chertsey, and I have to say that it's been sort of an ongoing work in motion to try to get it sort of get into shape. Some years it hasn't been utilised as well as it should have, and we've dealt with issues with weed issues coming from a history of being an organic cropping farm, so they had a large weed seed bank, particularly with grass weeds, so it made difficult to run ryegrass trials or any other grass trials. But I think we're getting on top of that, and we've got a great layout of trials this year. It's probably the best we've ever had, and we're looking at running a spring field event at the Kowhai site, which will be exciting. Hopefully, we had a small one last year. We were looking at some different crops and different trials, particularly the Tyne weeding trial was quite an exciting one. We had a really good turnout, which shows some good events. Good number of people attended. So I think it's looking up for the Kowhai site.
Yeah, because I know that, I mean, it is a very visible site, because so many people drive, along that road and the site's there. So it is quite a good place to sort of showcase far. And as soon as you put sunflower in there, that always seems to attract people who want to come and have a look.
Yeah, it was amazing how many people you had stopping along the fence line to take photos or of the sunflowers, and it was a good crop rotation too when we had it in there. So we run that site with essentially one column in research trials, and then the rest of the site, which is roughly 10 hectares like Chertsey, is more of a commercial kind of, well, not commercial, but like a commercial crop, where we grow a single crop. And so we've had sunflowers, we've had maize, we've had cover crops of triticale and oats, and last year we were in seed peas, and this year we're putting in milling wheat.
Yeah.
So,
now, I thought originally that Kowhai was also supposed to be used to sort of test out a whole load of new technologies. Is that still the case?
Yes, so when it first was set up, a whole range of soil moisture monitoring equipment was set up. After the first year, it kind of lost contact with a bit of that stuff, and it came offline, but we still do have lysimeter in there. We're using grid sampling, we're using soil moisture probes. We have a soil moisture probe trial in there now, so that all the commercial soil probes available to the public, we're testing them against each other. So we're still really trying to bring as much technology on site as we possibly can. We did drone spraying last year in peas. We've got subsurface irrigation, a trial that a student from Canterbury University just did a master's on. So yeah, I think we're still trying to bring that technology basis to the site, and not just Kowhai, at Chertsey as well. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've obviously been looking after both of those sites. What are the kind of challenges that you have? I mean, Chertsey is sort of pretty well out from any rural area, but I mean, obviously, Kowhai is right beside the Lincoln Township. I mean, are there challenges with having a research site?
Yes, and I think all the research sites around that area are really challenging with the way that housing is encroaching on our arable land or our agricultural land. So yeah, bird control is probably the biggest one that comes to mind. Like if we're using gas guns, we're getting complaints. So I see they're going to be probably unavailable for us to use in the coming future. We utilising lasers, but yeah, I have to say birds are probably our biggest issue on that site. Other issues we have just the weed seed bank. Particular weeds are quite hard to control. Getting some Vulpia ryegrass. Vulpia is a problem weed, especially in our ryegrasses. And then also probably some that we've made a bit more for ourselves difficult to deal with going to more minimum tillage, having issues with seed bed preparation, and then also pre-emerge herbicides if you don't have a good enough seed bed. So there's all factors, and it's like any farming, that it's what you do in one system, it influences the other. So there's always challenges, but it's always a fun way to overcome them.
So, I mean, research sites often get criticised that they're not representative of, the real farming system. And I mean, that's a valid comment. But, we try and balance that out. I mean, we've got our research sites, but we also do a lot of research on growers' properties as well. Do you find that the results that we're getting, say, for example, at Chertsey, that they do translate on farm reasonably well?
Yes, and it's essential that we do trial them in these small plot trials to start with. I think you need that starting ground, and as soon as you take something on farm, you lose the ability to be able to run a number of treatments, particularly. So yes, I think it's essential for us, and it does relate very well. So the way that FAR works, we like to test what we're doing in small plot trials, and then when the results that we're seeing, the top ones, we do like to take on farm, and if it is doing paddock demonstrations or side-by-side comparisons in large scale, I think that works really well. And I think the farmers like to see it too. Like, I mean, not just from a small plot scale scenario, but using their own gear, their own sprayers, their own harvesters, and especially when the treatments we've come up with works, it's really, really sort of exciting for a researcher, I think, to see it go from the ground roots all the way through to, into real life production.
So, I mean, obviously, we believe very strongly that those research sites underpin, the R&D that we're doing and add real value. And people often think that, we must be spending a huge amount of money on these research sites, but actually as a proportion of our overall budget, they're really good value for money.
Exactly, yeah. And like having them all together, like it cuts costs of coming in to do trials, so multiple work can be done at once. And it's, I think, just having them all together, like showcasing what we're doing in events like crops or ARIA, or having groups from, just farmer groups coming in, or reps bringing in farmers to look at certain trials. It's really valuable, and I think the research wouldn't be as robust if we had to do everything on farm.
Thank you very much, Owen. That was really interesting. And thank you, listeners. Have a great day on the farm.
Thanks for tuning in to Cut the Crop, presented to you by FAR. If you'd like to know more about any of the topics discussed or have any suggestions for future topics, go to www.cutthecrop.co.nz.